As the rest of the world moves on from COVID, China is clinging to it. The world's most populous country has less of the virus and more testing for it than anywhere else.
I need to do the COVID-19 test every 3 days. If I have to get into places or get on the subway or get on buses, I have to have COVID-19 negative test for 3 days.
Beijing resident Eva used to regularly travel in and out of China before the pandemic. But the border's been closed for almost 3 years, and China's government strongly rejects the idea of living with the virus.
It's not about preventing people from getting sick. I think it's more about managing people than helping people from diseases.
Testing stations like this have proliferated on streets across China. Data-hungry apps track movements. Armies of workers wage a war on COVID that far exceeds anything any other country has done. Cycles of lockdowns, movement restrictions and testing keep infection numbers negligible, but there's no publicly released plan out of it.
A lot of, I would say, frustration publicly for the Chinese people. Despite people's understanding of the necessary practice of zero COVID approach, but they say, okay, we have closed borders for too long probably because we are paying a price with this economic slowdown, and we need to do something.
Commentator Xu Jinping works for China's state broadcaster and a Beijing-based think tank.
Nobody has this, the answer to this, what's the solution to this situation. On one hand, the government, at the very beginning, I think they have made a decision that is, we will ensure the health of the public, even at the cost of the economy. Obviously, the Chinese government is ready to suffer from the economic slowdown. But then there's a question, like at what point we will say, oh, that's too much sacrifice in terms of the economy.
It's that weight of expectation that makes this year's Congress different. With China, the last major country left still trying to eliminate the virus, the all-of-society campaign to keep it suppressed has overshadowed Xi Jinping's other ambitions. It's contributed to a major economic slowdown that's hurting his so-called Belt and Road program to build the world's infrastructure. Enforcing Mr. Xi's COVID campaign has become a point of political loyalty. Local officials keenly publish videos of kids playing the flute in masks, or horseback health workers conquering the virus on the Tibetan slopes.
So they become a political performance to be seen to be enforcing the strict zero COVID rules, even though from outside it looks ludicrous and even crazy.
Many years ago, Han Yang worked for China's foreign ministry before migrating to Sydney. These days, he's sometimes targeted by Beijing's state media for his outspoken observations about Xi Jinping's COVID policy.
This is exactly what happened in Mao's years in the 1950s with his great leap forward. Because once he had an idea, nobody else around him can say no or challenge him. And so that stupid or crazy idea got carried out by the entire nation for a few years. And we've seen the disaster consequences of that.
In the last few days, the growing hopes for change on COVID policy have seemingly been crushed. Xi Jinping's most important official mouthpiece, the People's Daily newspaper, has published 3 editorials saying his COVID zero campaign must continue.
If China relaxes the policy, we will likely be seeing mass infections and a certain percentage of fatality. And that will probably be seen as fatal to his political leadership because he's already staked his entire political authority of the last 2 or 3 years on this zero COVID policy.
Despite the COVID frustrations and economic woes, Xi Jinping is expected to stay in power. But foreign relations remain shaky. Xi Jinping regularly tells the nation to be on guard against Western values. And China's relationship with the US is increasingly hostile. Government media blames America for everything from protests in Hong Kong to spreading COVID.
If you look at the relationship with the US, it's more challenging, I would say. Probably we won't be able to, or it's difficult to see some improvement. I think people are realistic because, from the US point of view, it's hard for them to accept, let's say, another country like China, which is challenging their, dominant position globally.
Xu Qinduo believes it might be a bit easier for Beijing to repair ties with other countries like Australia. But these aren't issues Xi Jinping publicly discusses. He doesn't do interviews, and the Communist Party he leads is adept at keeping its internal talks secret, leaving a lot of hope for change, but little to indicate it will actually happen.
Most immediate hope for me is that I can see my friends and family outside of the country. I'll definitely do it once the quarantine is minimized or lifted.